You are new, so you don't know this, Marcy said hurriedly. She was speaking much faster. To adapt to a new world, two evolutionary pathways exist for humans. Ah-gee-you, an almost perplexed-sounding guttural voice came again from the guardhouse. You, Luther and me, all belong to the first type of evolution. For those that belong to the second type, we call them, Duolujang, 1. Lin Sanju raised her head absently. At the moment, she was still unaware what was happening. While Marcy was rushing to finish her sentences, the door handle illuminated by Lin Sanjo's flashlight started to turn slowly. With a click, the door opened. Marcy took a deep breath. Duolujangs will do anything to survive. Since I don't have any combat abilities at all, we will have to depend on you to defeat the Duolujang. Otherwise, we will not survive this. Her words shot out quickly like a machine gun. Just as she finished her sentence, she jumped up to the tree beside them, before Lin Sanju could even react. Lin Sanju looked at the spot that Marcy disappeared from, dumbstruck. Then, she looked at Luther who was lying on the ground. Luther smiled at her rather helplessly, showing his sharp bucktooth. Big sis, I can't move anyway, stop looking at me, the Duolujang is coming out. She scrambled with her flashlight before pointing it back to the door of the guardhouse. When Lin Sanjo's gaze reached the door, she shoved and swallowed her intended, "Don't call me big sis" reply back into her stomach. She had never seen such a disgusting thing. Its wrinkled, viscous-looking dark brown skin clung tightly to its skeleton. At its joints, the excess skin accumulated in layers. It had shrunk to half the size of its original human body. Other than its bones and skin, there was not a single piece of flesh on its entire body. It was as if they had all been totally extracted. Above all, the worst thing, which raised goosebumps, was that barely human-like head. The area where its nose and mouth should have been was replaced with a large, long and slender, needle-like instrument which was like a mosquito mouthpiece. As the Duolujang approached, saliva dripped from that needle-like instrument drop by drop. The creature, which barely looked human, was still wearing a security guard uniform. However, the uniform was simply too large for its current body, and even before it took 2 steps, the uniform slid to the ground. Missing its eyelids, its eyeballs turned in their sockets. The Duolujang locked its gaze on Lin Sanju. "Gee, you're all so beautiful." Unexpectedly, that needle-like instrument similar to a mosquito mouthpiece actually produced a drone of human speech. "Your skins look so supple, they must be so moist." Lin Sanju froze on the spot. Suddenly, there was a whisper from the ground beside her. "Big sis, we are all counting on you." The voice did not belong to Luther. Lin Sanju turned her head and found that it was not a handsome young man that was trapped under the metal gates. Instead, in his place, there was a honest-looking girl who was about 10. She had rosy cheeks and looked like a kid from the countryside. Ads by PubFuture. Apparently, one of Luther's ability was shapeshifting. Furthermore, the appearance of his transformation probably depended on his target. Just as this thought flashed across her mind, Lin Sanju scolded back, indignantly, "I'm also injured." She quickly took 2 steps back. As she retreated, Luther was revealed. Under the dim light from the flashlight, his small face showed an expression that was on the brink of tears. Seeing Luther, the desiccated corpse-like Duolujang, with a mosquito mouthpart, paused for a moment, visibly. Lin Sanju stealthily shifted her position a little. "Sis." The desiccated corpse suddenly stepped 2 steps forward. It scared Lin Sanju, and she retreated 1 meter backward. She was on full alert. Yet, the desiccated corpse did not even give her a glance. Its pair of exposed eyeballs stared directly at Luther. "Sis, what are you doing here?" The desiccated corpse was too close. Before it could finish its sentence, the salivary fluid from its mouthpart had already dripped over Luther's face. It was clear that Luther shuddered for a moment from the disgust, yet he managed to control his expression perfectly. "Brother, I came here to look for you. Help me. The weight of the metal gates is hurting me." Tears were seeping from the girl's bright eyes, as she continued, "Brother, please lift the metal gates, I want to get up." The desiccated corpse hesitated for a while, seeming to harbor an unknown thought. It turned a deaf ear to Luther's plea and sighed in a low voice, "Sis, you shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have come." Noticing that the desiccated corpse in front of her was totally distracted, Lin Sanju rushed to the tree where Marcy was on and waved her hands. She gave Marcy a few signals, retreating further and further away as she signaled. Marcy jumped over to another nearby tree silently. She slid down the tree truck and hurried over to join Lin Sanju. Fortunately, the monster had retained its rationality and human nature, otherwise, the situation would have been thorny. This thought barely appeared in Lin Sanju's mind when the desiccated corpse suddenly lifted its head and made a series of intense buzzing sounds. Surprisingly, it managed to swing its sharp mouthpart nimbly in the air for a few times. As it did this, everything nearby was covered in its saliva. "But sis, I am very happy," it continued in an ear-piercing buzzing voice. There was a cheeriness in its tone. "The body fluid from a family member is a great supplement for your brother. I am so happy. I don't even have to go home, and you came here by yourself." That chilling sentence nearly scared the souls out of the three of them. No one would have guessed that Luther would suddenly be treated as a defenseless piece of meat. As Luther saw the desiccated corpse eagerly lifting its mouthpart, he cried out in fear, "Marcy, save me. Don't." Before Lin Sanju could block her, Marcy had already run past her. Lin Sanju was so mad that she stomped her feet before she turned and ran in the opposite direction. Nevertheless, Marcy had made the right decision. Just when the sharp mouthpart was about to pierce into Luther's chest, she violently hit it with her long metal nails. The mouthpart was pushed upward while Marcy's nails, which appeared powerful, were smashed into bits and falling all over the ground. It was after all only for drawing blood. Facing a small obstruction, the exposed eyeballs of the desiccated corpse turned toward Marcy. It did not have even the slightest interest in her. Instead, it buzzed, "Get lost. False blood and flesh, sis, I am coming." When it lowered its head, it paused. "Huh, who are you? Where is my sister?" Just like that, within the time of one breath, Luther, who was lying on the ground, had turned into a skinny, dark brown and dried up corpse with a large and long mosquito-like mouthpart. The two, desiccated corpse, stared at each other for a few seconds. "Did you absorb my younger sister?" Perhaps, the desiccated corpse was not that intelligent. As it realized that the flesh from its family member it was so close to getting suddenly disappeared, its mouthpart vibrated rapidly in fury. "Gu, ah, Gu, ah, I will kill you." This time round, it lifted its mouthpart much faster. Just when Marcy was about to block it with her arm, the desiccated corpse whirled its mouthpart to one side and pushed her away. She flew backward, landing heavily on the ground nearby. As he saw the sharp instrument coming down on him again, Luther closed her eyes, quietly preparing himself for his imminent death. He only heard a loud clash, and with this, the expected stab disappeared. Luther immediately opened his eyes. At that moment, he spotted Lin Sanju making an urgent brake. She stopped the car exactly beside the metal gates. At the same time, the desiccated corpse was knocked 2 to 3 meters away by the Audi. Lin Sanju pushed open the car doors and jumped out. As she placed her hand on the metal gates, she shouted over to Marcy, loudly, "Marcy! Quick, come over to drive the car." The desiccate corpse stood up furiously and approached them in large strides. The knock from the car had left it unscathed. Its angry buzzing voice seemed to grow even sharper, but Marcy was one step ahead. Just as Lin Sanju got down from the car, she rushed over towards them. A white light flashed across her palm a few times. Lin Sanju's body dripped with sweat as if she was standing under a showerhead. Her arm trembled more and more, but there was not the slightest hint that the metal gates were disappearing. Marcy threw herself into the car. She used one of her hand to open the back door of the car and yelled anxiously, "Quick, quick! It's reaching us, can't you see I'm trying?" It was extremely difficult for Lin Sanju to mouth each of the words. Finally, as a white light shined, the metal gates disappeared for 2 seconds. However, the heavy metal gates instantly reappeared after that and fell heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dirt. "I can't do it," she panted heavily, almost about to sit down on the ground. "Get into the car." Luther's voice rang abrupted from behind her. It turned out that Luther managed to get out under the gates when it disappeared for a moment. He rushed into the back seat. Just as he turned to look over, he saw the nearby, desiccated corpse, suddenly lunging its mouthpart forward, toward Lin Sanju. Dodge. Lin Sanju did not even have the time to turn her head, she just quickly pushed herself down to the ground. At the same time, Marcy kicked the car door open with her leg and, once again, it blocked the mouthpart, which hit against the car window, just in time. Smash! The windows shattered into a million pieces. Within this split second, Luther had already scrambled over and pulled Lin Sanju into the car. He did not even care to close the door, but instead repeatedly said, "Go. Go. Go." As she saw the desiccated corpse lunging towards them again, Marcy turned the steering wheel vigorously. The car barely brushed past the side of the desiccated corpse, and they heard an eerie scraping sound. She hit the accelerator all the way down, and the Audi sped away, leaving the desiccated corpse far behind them. Everyone in the car only managed to calm down and take a breath after the door was closed. Lin Sanjo's mobile phone had already fallen out at the entrance of the residential complex at some unknown time. At that moment, Luther and her leaned against the back seat and stared through the rear window. Under the hazy light from the flashlight of her phone, they could see the desiccated corpse swaying as it chased after them for a few steps. Seeing the widening distance between them, it finally gave up. Appearing to stop and think for a moment, the desiccated corpse turned and walked into the residential complex. There probably would not be any survivors left in the Rongjun residential complex. Contemporary romance. Apparently, the weakness of the duolujang here is the slow speed of their movement, Marcy said as she wiped her sweat and looked into the rearview mirror. Lin Sanju gave the two of them a bottle of water each, from her stash she kept in the car. She, herself, gulped down half a bottle of water. She sat in a daze not knowing what to say. The events that happened today, in merely a few short hours, simply felt like a dream. "Thank you," Luther, who was sitting beside her, said bashfully after drinking 2 mouthfuls of water. He showed her his bucktooth. "Just now, you could have just run away by yourself. Thanks for risking your life to save me. And it seems like we can really coordinate quite well." From the rearview mirror, they could see Marcy's smile as she lifted one of her eyebrows. She was barely acquainted with them, yet they have already fought alongside each other in a life-and-death battle. Looking at the two people, Lin Sanju smiled faintly for the first time today. "That's right. So, can we talk about this goddamn world now?" Under Lin Sanju directions, Marcy drove all the way to the 38th floor condominium and parked the car in a secluded spot for them to rest. This was a high-end residential estate after all, so there were lesser people compared to the outside. Even in this world that had changed beyond recognition, the garden still looked unusually peaceful now. Hesitating for a moment, Lin Sanju sealed the broken window and switched on the air conditioner. Zhu Mei was no longer around. It made no sense to save that electricity. A cool environment would not only help her recover her strength, it would also be good for that wound on her neck. At least, it would reduce the chances of infection under such high temperatures. Despite how logical her decision was, she could not help feeling somewhat crestfallen as the cool wind started to blow. Luther noticed her expression. He sighed and comforted, "Big sis, don't grieve too much. Your friend, at least your friend did not die at the hands of a duolujang." After experiencing that near-death encounter together, their relationship had unwittingly grown closer. Lin Sanju could feel the kindness in Luther's words and smiled. She only replied after a while, saying, "Can you stop calling me big sis? I am really not much older than you." "That's right, I haven't had the time to introduce myself just now. My name is Lin Sanju. Well, I just evolved recently." "So your name is derived from the phrase, 'Mortal affairs are discussed merely over 3 cups of wine.'" Luther immediately pouted. "My name can't compete with yours. I will call you Xiaoju, and, why did you tie a towel around your neck?" "Oh," his words reminded Lin Sanju. She quickly took off the wet and warm towel, exposing the messy, mangled wound. Luther suddenly drew a breath when he saw it. Marcy raised both her eyebrows, looking puzzledly at Lin Sanju. Lin Sanju opened a bottle of clean water and started cleaning her wound. As she did this, she recounted the incident with Ren Nan. Largely due to the fact that the two of them had saved her during that previous critical juncture, Lin Sanju was very willing to trust them. Unlike Luther, who listened dumbfoundedly, Marcy listened silently with knotted brows. Suddenly, she pointed to the bottle of clean water. Lin Sanju paused for a moment, and Marcy offered, "Let me do it. I have studied medical science for a few years." After that, she took a roll of bandage and some antibiotics from her waist pouch. Can a personality that had achieved a corporeal body actually have a set of life experience? Lin Sanju shot Luther a look of confusion but did not say anything. She just lifted her head and swallowed the 2 antibiotics obediently. With Marcy's skills, it did not take long for the wound on her neck to be properly dressed and bandaged. After listening to her story, Luther was still a little engrossed in the details. I have heard about such cannibalistic abilities, but Marcy and I have never met someone like that before. I always thought that it was just an urban legend. I can't believe it was actually real. That Ren Nan probably only evolved recently too, that's why you managed to easily get rid of him. Otherwise, if he was given more time, who knows how powerful he would have become. Ads by PubFuture. Luckily, we didn't meet such a person, Marcy commented quietly. After she had spent half a night with them, Lin Sanju could tell that even though Marcy was unable to engage in real combat, she was nimble, cool-headed and more experienced. She felt more reliable than Luther. Can you explain to me about this world? What is happening? How many worlds are there? Lin Sanju faced Marcy and could not help asking. Why are you asking Marcy and not me? She heard a protest from beside her coming from Luther. As if she did not hear her question, Marcy replied with another question instead. Have you heard about the theory of parallel dimensions before? Lin Sanju answered with an, ah. Before continuing, apart from our universe, there is an infinite number of parallel universes. Every measurable behavior, even every single choice that a person made, will create a split, will create a new parallel universe. She had read many science fiction novels before, so she knew of such a thing. Marcy nodded with a calm demeanor, saying, I will just state first that this is just a conjecture. Some posthumans agree, and others disagree. Me, I agree with it. I am not sure how many people there are in your world. In our world, we had a population of 4.3 billion. Every single decision that a person makes in his or her lifetime will create a parallel dimension. If you decided to take the path to the left today, then the alternate dimension will be that you had chose the path to the right, and within that new dimension, everyone will continuously make decisions and create other new dimensions. If we take this into account, who knows how many worlds exist? The number is just uncountable. Originally, we all lived our lives peacefully in our own dimensions. Within our lifetime, there was no way that we would ever meet someone from another dimension. But for some unknown reason, some of the dimensions started mutating, just like this one. While Marcy paused for a while, Lin Sanju quickly interjected and asked, did they all turn out like this? Did they all have high-temperature climates? Luther replied to her with a rare look of seriousness, not necessarily. For our world, half the population died due to an epidemic which was caused by a virus outbreak from a laboratory facility. It suddenly occurred to Lin Sanju that he had probably lost his family and friends in his world. The space in the car fell silent for a few seconds. Marcy broke the silence, and continued, no one could tell with certainty how many of these dimensions have mutated. The only thing that can be confirmed is that it is not a small number. At that time, we survived the epidemic and evolved. We thought that we only had to strive our best to survive on. But, Marcy stopped. She seemed to be deliberating on the best method to explain the situation. On the 14th month, Luther and I were already accustomed to the new world which was filled with epidemics and duolujang. Misfortune struck on a normal night. When Luther and I woke up, we found ourselves lying in the middle of a battleground. Can you imagine? We had just opened our eyes, we did not even understand where we were, and suddenly a bomb fell just 50 meters away from us, Marcy added aptly. Even though we were not unable to comprehend what had happened, at the very least, we quickly understood one thing: we were no longer in our original world. We asked around and finally found out that the world was called, a land dyed black by blood. In that world which was governed by wars, we survived miserably for another 14 months. On the last day of the 14th month, the same thing happened again. Luther's voice sounded distant. Even within the cool air-conditioned interior of the car, a drop of sweat rolled down Lin Sanjo's forehead. She understood, and before Luther could say another word, she softly said, you appeared here. Contemporary romance. Luther sighed and nodded. Hyperthermal hell. Hyperthermal hell. Lin Sanju opened her mouth, about to say something, when Luther had already guessed what she wanted to ask. It doesn't happen only to me. In the 2 worlds that we have been, all the posthumans that I've met were sent away after 14 months. Furthermore, everyone will go to a different place each time. Her heart pounded hard for a few moments. With some doubts, Lin Sanju said, does that mean, after 14 months, I will also reach another new world? Marcy replied confidently. It is probably because I am just an alternate personality, so I will follow Luther wherever he goes. However, we were separated from all our past companions. Waves after waves of unimaginable information flooded Lin Sanjo's brain. After she mulled over it for a while, she suddenly realized something. Wait, you mentioned that every post-human will be sent to a different world. Does it mean that we are just flung out into an infinite abyss of apocalyptic worlds by pure chance? Did this mean that once she left this place, she might not be able to return to this world, where she grew up within her lifetime? No, not only that, it almost meant that once 14 months have passed, Luther and Marcy will be sent to some unknown world and they might never meet again. She had just met two people that she could trust, yet she was immediately informed that they will separate. It was a weird feeling. The car's windows were long covered by a thin film of condensation. It was clear that even within the short time of their conversation, the temperature outside had risen again. Lin Sanju turned up the temperature of the air conditioner slightly. As she was immersed in the silence, she suddenly thought about another possibility. Wait, from the point of a parallel dimension theory, there is an infinite number of me. That is to say, I might meet myself in another world. Unexpectedly, Marcy shook her head firmly. Just like Darwin's theory of evolution, the theory about parallel dimensions is only the best explanation for these apocalyptic worlds. It is limited to what we know and just a conjecture, it is not actually a fact. But what you've just said, is precisely the flaw in this theory. Because in another new world, there will never be another you. Lin Sanju felt a little overwhelmed. She received too much information for tonight. She could not help leaning back on the seat as her brain was filled with information about everything regarding the new world. She remained silent and in a daze. Suddenly, she heard a swoosh. She lifted her head and saw that Marcy's nails had transformed into those long metal nails. Marcy was looking with a hopeful glint in her eyes. So, can you let me draw your blood now? Translator's note. Sanju is literally, 3 wine, in Chinese. The translated phrase mortal affairs are discussed merely over 3 cups of wine is not derived from any classical poem, it is a modern saying telling people to take things a little easier as life is fleeting. Among post-humans, there was an unwritten rule that you should not inquire about someone's ability. As the variety of abilities gained through evolution were extremely unique and unusual, perhaps even beyond people's imaginations, even a single seemingly unremarkable ability might become a trump card to one's survival. Naturally, no one was willing to show their trump cards to others. Unless it was really necessary, most people abstained from even using their abilities in front of others. Luther had brought up this point to Lin Sanju before, so why did Marcy made such a request? It is a misunderstanding, Marcy smiled, probably realizing that her request seemed inappropriate. She wasn't that young in the first place, so when she smiled, a few lines of faint wrinkles appeared on her face. Considering the current level of my ability, I am unable to tell what active skills you have. I can only analyze some of your basic stats. I think it will be useful for you to know some of your own basic stats as well. This, of course, depends on your decision. Do you want to try? Okay, Lin Sanju replied without any hesitation, stretching her arm out. I trust the both of you. Besides, during their tussle with the duolujang, Luther and herself had already exposed many of their abilities to each other. Both of them were not stupid. Since she could guess how Luther's abilities work, similarly, Luther would definitely have an inkling of what hers were. It wasn't really necessary to be so secretive. The hard tips of her metal nails gleamed with a cold metal sheen. It barely touched Lin Sanjo's arm, and just as if invited, the tip of her nail sunk into Lin Sanjo's skin. Just when Lin Sanju was beginning to feel a slight pain, Marcy had already withdrawn her nails and was smiling at her. It's done. She took the single spherical drop of blood and dripped it on her palm. The drop of blood immediately disappeared, following which, Marcy closed her eyes. When Lin Sanju looked at her arm again, she could see that the gash was so minute that it had long clotted. Marcy's ability is quite basic right now, so she will need quite some time to analyze that data. Luther explained, sounding rather embarrassed. All active skills will slowly be upgraded over time, you will understand in the future. Contemporary romance. Lin Sanju thought about that weird ability of hers. Does that mean that those rubbish cards will be upgraded? What will they become? At the bare minimum, it should allow her to transform items without any limit, right? Ads by PubFuture. As she thought of this, she somehow recalled that she had already stored the metal gates twice, even though the second time only lasted for a short 2 seconds. She wondered if she had used up her quota for today. She needed to find the right time to test it out. While waiting for Marcy to analyze the data, and out of her own curiosity, Lin Sanju started chatting with Luther. Compared to her, he was the more experienced one, having been through 2 other new worlds. As he shared his experiences, many of which new and foreign to her, she listened, feeling amazed for one moment, laughing out loud the next, and even felt on the edge during the exciting parts. Luther probably had not spoken so carefreely to someone in a long time. Their relationship improved within only that short span of time. They were almost done with their conversation. When they looked over to Marcy again, she was still in the same position. Her eyes were fully shut, and she did not make a sound. How long does it take for Marcy to analyze the data? Lin Sanju finally asked. From what I see, I think she'll need another 1 to 2 hours, Luther replied, appearing slightly embarrassed. It didn't take her that long to analyze my stats. In the past, that long? Lin Sanju was startled. She immediately leaned over and looked upward to the sky through the car window. At that moment, the color of the black night sky was already visibly lighter, and the horizon in the east was already showing a line of ashen white. As she plopped back into her seat, her face revealed her slight worry. What's wrong? What's with that face? It'll be dawn soon, Lin Sanju mumbled, turning to Luther. It is already that hot at night. Once the sun rises, the car will be directly under the sunlight. What will be the temperature then? Luther was momentarily stumped by her question. They looked at each other in dismay. Lin Sanju massaged the area between her brows and said a little wearily, if we stay another 2 hours here, we will all become roasted ducks. Even though there was an adequate amount of electricity and petrol in the car to maintain the air conditioner for some time, this bit of cool air seemed ever so fragile compared to the vicious assault of heat from the outside environment, and this was only the situation at night. When morning would come, that pitiable air conditioner in the car would definitely not last against the heat of the scorching sun even if it overworks till it breaks down. You are familiar with this place, so do you have any suggestions? Luther, who had maintained a relaxed look all this while, couldn't help taking things more seriously right now. She did have an idea. The most luxurious shopping mall in the city was located near this condominium estate. The building itself was basically useless. The mall was designed with a tall tropical forest feature in the center, and to create the visual impact of an integrative nature experience, the ceiling was built with transparent reinforced glass. In the past, having the sunlight on your shoulders, while strolling among the greenery was a wonderful experience. In the present context, it was definitely deadly. However, the basement of the shopping mall was occupied by a huge import supermarket. Aside from providing shelter from the sunlight, there was also a large quantity of food and water. As Lin Sanju described the mall, Luther suddenly became excited. Supermarket. That's great. You don't know this, but Marcy and I have not eaten any decent human food in over a year. In the previous new world that we were in, we ate hardtack or army rations every day. When the situation was really bad, we had even resorted to chewing on tree barks. My God, I had a bad constipation, my stomach was as hard as a rock. Lin Sanju looked at him with lifted brows. Luther realized that he had said too much and gave an awkward cough. You're right. We have no idea what the temperature would be like in the morning. We should indeed start planning. After they discussed quietly for a while, both of them quickly came to a decision. They will first drive to the entrance of the shopping mall, next they will park the car in a shady spot, thereafter Luther will carry Marcy, and they will enter the supermarket together. The food section took up the largest area in the supermarket. In addition to that, there would also be stock in the warehouse. There should be more than enough ration for 3 of them. Furthermore, the location of the shopping mall was ideal. If they were lucky, they could even settle down in the supermarket, it could be their main shelter, and they could live there peacefully for a year. Lin Sanju knew that she might be a little over-optimistic, the actual circumstances probably wouldn't be as ideal. Unfortunately, she could not foresee that even the first step of their plan, driving up to the entrance of the mall, would end up being a practically impossible mission. The shopping mall was situated in an exceptionally good location. It was just on the main street of the city center. The small district nearby was famous for its nightlife. The lights were lit throughout the night, and it had never-ending traffic. Coincidentally, this month was the shopping mall's 5th-year anniversary, so they were open for 24 hours for the entire month. As the temperatures soared last night, the first thought that many people had was to head there to seek refuge from the heat. Right now, the main street was crammed with a long queue of cars with loud, rumbling engines. Their car was at the very end of the line. All working cars were, of course, in ignition. As she squinted her eyes and looked toward the direction of the shopping mall, she could somehow see the area around the water fountain at the entrance. It was littered with a dense crowd of people, lying on the ground. It was probably impossible for them to drive the car over. Lin Sanju struck the steering wheel violently and decided to reverse the car. However, in the time that she paused to look at the situation, another car had now appeared in the view of her rear mirror. Their Audi was now trapped in the queue. The electrical grid had been down for hours. Why are there still people heading in this direction? As they were surrounded by a countless number of hot-running engines, the flaw of the broken window in their car was made obvious. The miserable bit of cool air from the air conditioner could not match the savage heat that seeped through the gaps of the makeshift seal on the broken window. Luther's fair skin was gradually turning pink, just like a giant rabbit. Lin Sanju sighed. They probably wanted to get out of the city. This is the main street. It is linked to a couple of intercity expressways. Let's just wait. The car behind us would definitely also decide to leave. Just within the time span of her 2 sentences, a few more cars joined the line. The first car of that new group suddenly realized the situation in front. Perhaps the driver was too anxious. Without even any warning, she grabbed her steering wheel and reversed. The car collided with the hood of the car behind it. Thick smoke immediately rose out. Lin Sanju gave a quiet yelp due to the shock before she cursed out with expletives. The car that tried to reverse was a Land Rover. The large vehicle was now in a horizontal position. It had basically blocked off half the road. In addition to that, the car with the damaged hood did not look functional anymore. Now, the way back was totally blocked. In the distance, a car that just joined the line quickly made a turn and escaped. Apart from Marcy, who was totally unaware of her surroundings, the two of them in the car sighed. What choice do they have now? They could only abandon the car and continue on foot. The sky was now a hue of green, just like duck eggs. It certainly wasn't as bright as being in broad daylight, but it was bright enough for them to see everything. How much water do we still have? Luther licked his dry, chapped lips, feeling uneasy. Lin Sanju looked at her backpack. Actually, she knew even without looking. There was not even a single bottle of mineral water left. She only had 3 cans of cola, and they were even warm. Considering the condition of both their bodies, she threw over a can of cola. There are only 3 of these. Just drink it quickly. Even if it doesn't hydrate you, at least you get some sugar. We will probably need quite a lot of energy to get there. Unexpectedly, once Luther drank a mouthful, he paused. As he burped, he asked, "What's this?" Apparently, in his original world, the Coca-Cola company did not exist. Looking at him smack his lips savoring the last bit of the beverage, Lin Sanju finished hers as well. She threw out the empty can and asked, "Are you ready?" Luther nodded. She took a deep breath, opened the car door and got out. The air, which was now several times hotter than before, rushed toward them.